Exemptions and zero rating. So VAT accounts for 2% of GDP in terms of tax expenditure, one of the largest drivers of foregone revenue. For those who are still struggling with why is this transition important, make us understand.
Okay, so maybe it's useful to trace the history of ETRs in this country and why this came into place.
Where ETR, you mean electronic tax register?
Yes, electronic tax register. Yeah,
okay.
Let's start from there, electronic tax register. So what happened is that in 2004, after the new administration came in, they realized that there is a huge issue in terms of the performance of VAT. And the simple reason was taxpayers were charging VAT. So for example, contractors, you charge government VAT, but then you don't remit it to Revenue Authority. And so what government did is that in 2004, September, they came up with electronic tax register regulations, which required everybody who is VAT registered to install this device. It was financed by the Exchequer because as a taxpayer, you are allowed to claim the full cost of that machine. And so with that, you saw an increase or a better performance of VAT. Yeah. Now you talked about the expenditure being 2%. Right now, VAT is performing at about 3.9% of GDP. So you can see that this additional 2% expenditure is what where the problem is. However, VAT has performed above 6% of GDP in the past. In fact, when Kenya's tax to GDP ratio was about 18%, yeah. VAT accounted for about a third of that. But you see right now, we are about 25% because it's about 3.9% of about 16%. Yeah. And so that is the problem with the VAT. The Revenue Authority has been looking at it and saying this tax head is underperforming. And it's got a lot of potential because it's a consumption tax. You know, everybody, for as long as you buy something, then you have to pay the VAT. And so this is what gave rise to the tax invoice management system teams that we're talking about today, and which is essentially allowing Revenue Authority to access a taxpayer's records on a real-time basis as far as VAT is concerned. Okay. So this was the genesis of this, and this is the reason why we're saying we are pleading for an extension, because it is for the good of this country, as many people as possible paying their VAT, because that will drive the VAT compliance in this country.
Robert, I'm wondering, how is it that Kenya is lagging behind markets like Rwanda as far as this is concerned?
Well, Julian, that's an interesting question, because part of the problem is some of these countries like Rwanda, for example, Ghana, Egypt, they have adopted web-based solutions so that I don't need to buy hardware. You see, the problem in Kenya we are facing right now is that we have to first of all buy the hardware, which is then integrated to Revenue Authority's systems so that it can report, because the essence is really real-time reporting. But some of these markets that you've mentioned, they use what is called API, Application Programming Interfaces. So it essentially allows a web-based interaction without necessarily buying the hardware. And what that does is that it makes the solution much cheaper, much more versatile, because as technology evolves, you don't have to change the hardware. Yeah. And really, that's the question that taxpayers are asking. Could we have a more versatile solution?
There's a question here, Robert. Can you please ask Robert who specifically is eligible for this thing? Are there thresholds in terms of turnover?
Fantastic question. So the obligation to